But then after all, I turned around and I called Woodlawn, and I spoke to a young lady by the name of Claire Monroe. And Claire and I was going over some designs of how we can make this thing work. And she came up with the perfect design, which you will see in a few minutes. After that, I have been fighting the South Carolina Hall of Fame since 1998 to get James inducted. And I still haven't given up. So when I took on this project, and as well as I know going in, that this was going to be tedious. And I said, well, okay, I'll just go ahead and do this anyway because I'm a big spirited people. And James is my family. So whatever you do, fight for family. Family is first. You got to stay with family. And I would like to thank all of the fans who contributed to this headstone and to this headstone fund. And I'd like to thank all of them from the bottom of my heart. And God bless. I would like to thank especially Professor Jason Johnson, Mayor John Tecklenburg. I'd like to thank my lovely wife because she put up with me going through all of this crap for the past 3 years. And I'd like to thank my family. But God bless all of you, and may all of you enjoy. Next up, we have Mr. Danny Toombs.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Danny Jones, and I get nervous, so be patient. It's just small. It's a privilege and an honor for me to be here. I was an inspiring classical guitarist that changed when I walked into Motown Studio on July 5th of 2013. I was overcome with the saddest feeling, and I don't know why. I sold my classical guitar and bought a Fender Precision. I didn't want to play bass. I wanted to play bass like James. No other musician has made an impact on me like him. I almost quit the guitar if I hadn't got to meet Joe Messina. It's because of my love for Jamerson that happened. I've been coming to James's gravesite since 2013, praying for him to have a really nice tombstone. Thanks to everyone, especially Anthony, for making my dream come true. Thank you. Thank you to all of you.
Next up we have Miss Rochelle Riley.
Thank you all so much for being here today. On behalf of Mayor Mike Duggan and my office, the Office of Arts, Culture, and Entrepreneurship, I could not be anywhere else when I found out this was happening. And I want to just remind you of who we're honoring. The pride of Charleston, the pride of Detroit, the pride of the world. James Lee Jamerson, with whom I share a birthday, January 29th, was an American bass player. But he wasn't just a bass player. He was the uncredited bassist on most of the Motown Records hits in the 1960s and early 1970s. Motown did not list session musician credits on their releases until 1971. Mr. Jamerson is now regarded as one of the most influential bass players in modern music history. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2000. As a session musician, he played on 23 Billboard Hot 100 #1 hits and 56 R&B #1 hits. In its special issue, the 100 Greatest Bass Players 2017, Bass Player magazine ranked Mr. Jamerson #1 and the most influential bass guitarist. In 2020, Rolling Stone magazine, the Bible of music, ranked Mr. Jamerson #1 on its list of the 50 greatest bassists of all time. I now have some very special gifts from the city of Charleston. Mayor John J. Tecklenburg, with whom I had dinner a few weeks ago, and I didn't know this was coming, this was all Anthony, has sent this proclamation, and there are copies for his beautiful wife, Annie, for Joey Jamerson, his son, and for Tammy Robinson Jamerson, his daughter, and one for Penny Jamerson, his other daughter. But I'll just read the beginning of the one that I'll give you, Nadine. Whereas the city of Charleston is proud to posthumously honor its native son, James Lee Jamerson, who after spending his childhood and adolescent years on Edisto Island and downtown Charleston, developed a remarkable career as a jazz, rhythm, and blues and Motown bassist, and as a bass player with Motown's house band, the Funk Brothers, and who made an indelible mark on American culture. And whereas James Lee Jamerson is remembered as a musical genius and pioneer who, as stated by Berry Gordy, founder and producer of Motown Records, revolutionized the artistry of the bass. He was also recognized by Smokey Robinson, Motown composer and father, as the father of the modern day bass. And whereas James Lee Jamerson discography of Motown and other rhythm and blues hits are numerous, and he was honored with the Lifetime Achievement Award and was inducted into Sideman category Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And whereas James Lee Jamerson's incomparable jazz and rhythm and blues career is celebrated and remembered by his family, friends, fellow musicians, and most especially the Funk Brothers. And whereas James Lee Jamerson's musical legacy is now documented as the first efforts of the Charleston Jazz Initiative of the Avery Research Center at the College of Charleston, and now included in the historic legacy in the Low Country and woven into the fabric of the Charleston community, nation, and world. Whereas I encourage my fellow citizens to recognize and honor the talent of James Lee Jamerson and extend sincere appreciation to his family for their support and contributions to the Avery Research Center. Now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, on behalf of the City Council and all of our citizens, do hereby proclaim Friday, August 27th, 2021 to be James Lee Jamerson Day. In witness whereof set my hand the seal of Charleston on the 19th day of August in the year of 2021. I don't have to tell you how much music means to Detroit, but I am glad we're here today to celebrate what James Jamerson meant to music. So on behalf of the city, I thank you so much, and thank you all for making this happen. Oh, I'm sorry, there was one other thing. We are going to get him into the South Carolina Hall of Fame.
Thank you, Michelle. Next up, I want to bring to you my brother, one of my older brothers, Mr. Kendrick. Come on up here, son. Come on up here, son. I know he looks like my older brother. That's because you wouldn't let his grow, that's all. Growing up with James Jamerson, we went through a lot of stuff. Like, at his funeral, the McKnight Brothers gospel singer sang at his funeral, and Earl Jones, the Tony Brothers drummer, says, you guys should be recording. But what he didn't know was growing up, Jamerson and his brother Richard was part of the McKnight Brothers gospel singers before I was too young. And in Eddie's store, I had to lift him up to climb through the church window so he could practice on the piano. You know, stuff like that. And then he asked me to come up here. I moved up here in September 1969. Doing certain things with him at Motown. I met Marvin Gaye, and I said something to him. He didn't like it, you know. So, but when he found out I was Jamerson's cousin, then he loved me. Then he loved me. And there was a time we did a fundraiser. Annie Jamerson was there. We did a fundraiser for Dr. Martin Luther King's wife, Coretta Scott King, and they bought the stock, the show, and Jamerson was on his high stool, you know, sleep. And I'm trying to wake him up, and Marvin Gaye said, no, just leave him alone, I said, man, you about to start the show, he said, leave him alone, watch this. Marvin Gaye, boom, the original came up first. 1, 2, 3, 2, I said, what the? He was playing in his sleep. You know, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. We have went everywhere together. It's just amazing to know how many people want to get like Rick James. You better not say nothing wrong about Jameson around Rick James. You know, Rick was already crazy. You know, you make him mad, oh boy. But those were the good old times. When I used to go to work with him,
it was not like going to work. It was like going to a party every day. Right. But after this, at 1 o'clock, we want everybody to meet at 19416 Livernois. That's at Livernois and Outer Drive. My boss, Herb Strabo, he's the owner of Motor City Hits and Squaggers Academy. He teaches real estate if you want to become a millionaire. Right, we lunch on him for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm hungry now. Okay, next up, one and only. Like they say, the queen. Your turn, darling.
Well, since I hit 80 the other day, I gotta have help up. Okay, thank you. Watch that home. Stay here. Oh, all right. Yeah. I have to wipe my ass. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank God because God is the giver of all good gifts, and He certainly gave my husband a marvelous
umbrella
gift.
from
James went to Northwestern, of course, and learned music, how to read music, but the gift of music and how He makes it feel, now that's another story. That's the gift from God. There are a lot of people that can play a lot of notes like things, but they still don't have the total feel. But anyways, I wanted to say that, Anthony, I remember that story a little bit different from you. I used to talk about having, since the time James died, I had to place James here because they wouldn't allow us to put up any headstones. You could look around, you just started where they put a little higher length. When I got here, I looked all around. They took me around to see where I wanted to bury James. But when I saw this, where's it at? The anchor of hope back here, I said, God, that's it. Our hope is in Christ Jesus. And so I got over here, really this spot, and I said, well, this is it, because I felt the Spirit, so to speak. And so I felt very comfortable, because you remember that old song, the hymnal, that says, when I wake up in the morning with my face to the rising sun. So I was thinking about, it says, oh Lord, have mercy on me. And you know, all of us need some mercy, right? So it was just perfect, and that's why I placed him here. He was never without a headstone. He just didn't have an upright because they didn't allow it in this area. And so my dream was to always have one upright. So I talked to Anthony. You heard me talk about this stuff over and over again, and I never got around to doing it. So Anthony called me up one day and said, Ann, I started to GoFundMe. I said, GoFundMe? He said, yeah, I started to GoFundMe for that headstone. I said, well, you did. So I said, well, I digested it a minute, and then I said, okay, well, you know, it doesn't matter, we'll see what happens. And Martha Reeves, and next thing I know, you had talked to Claire.
Yep.
And Claire had put together Martha Reeves, Dennis Coffey, Joe Pep, and I'm leaving out something, Spider Turner. And we went over to Mason's at the studio there, and that's when it all kind of started and bloomed. Okay, and so therefore it took 3 years, but we did have a pandemic in between, you know. It took a long time, and Mr. Jason Johnson came on and said it's taking too long, and he came along and filled in the gap, and so we so appreciate him. Where is he? Oh, right over there. You know my eyesight, you know how that is. So we appreciate you. I appreciate Anthony for work. He does work very hard. He did work very hard, and he's still working very hard for the Hall of Fame thing down in Charles. Yeah, but James was born in Edisto, and so when he was out, when school was out, he would always be over to their mom's house, and so I know he kept up a lot of ruckus, I'm sure, over there. So, but James started out at Northwestern High School because I met him about a couple of months after he moved to Detroit, and so you all heard the story about I didn't want to be bothered with it because he had a snaggletooth Anyways, the story goes, it's a swing over there on Forest and 16. And so I was swinging on my 13th birthday, and he walked behind me and started swinging me, and I was scared. Like, what are you doing? Anyways, that's how we met. And so, well, we were married by the time I was 16, the story goes. You know how that goes? So we had 4 lovely children, 3 sons and 1 daughter, and so to that union. And later on, we just found out a couple months ago, we had an added shock. And that's Tammy Robinson. But she's a wonderful girl, and we welcome her into our family because she's a beautiful young woman. What I was going to say is James went to Northwestern, and Dr. Hellstein, I'll always remember him because we were a young married couple, but he allowed James to keep the bass from the school to allow him to work and do little gigs outside, of Northwestern. And so he started playing jazz first of all. That's his first love, regardless. That's his first love. And so after that, there were several groups. He had a group with Charles McPherson, Lonnie Hilliard, who was it? Lonnie James, and I'm leaving out somebody. Charles McPherson, Lonnie Hilliard, and Clarence McLeod. They all played together from school and things of that nature. So I'm just sort of doing the history. And then it was Roy Brooks and what have you in his band. They used to practice over at the house. And then later on, he started going to the big jazz clubs. And you always hear me mention the jazz greats, Yusuf Lateef, and as well as, what's the other one right here? Yusuf Lateef and the other guy that played jazz. It'll come back to me in a minute. But that's where he started jazz. And they always told him he was going to be great and that he was ahead of his time. And everywhere he would go, he'd come back home and say, "Babe, guess what? They say I'm ahead of my time." I said, "Yeah, what? I'm ahead of your time, what?" And he said, "Playing the bass." They said, "Nobody ever played like you before." And so as it went on, that was the truth of that matter. He played with Washboard Willie. His first regular night gig, because he had to feed the babies, was Washboard Willie. There were several nights a week. But then Motown, actually, several stories have been told, but actually the true story is that Don Davis and he were working together and collaborating on something, and something broke down over at United Sound, and they went over to Motown Museum, and Motown Hitsville, and that was his first session ever at Motown. But the Motown session was probably Marv Johnson, something like that. And so, anyways, from that, I'm fast forwarding. James played on many hits a lot of times. He went on the road with Jackie Wilson for a minute because the studio was only paying him like $5, He went on the road with Jackie Wilson. Jackie Wilson, brother or relative or something, didn't pay the money right, so he quit. Then he went to the Miracles. And from the Miracles, he stayed with them 2.5 years. But he would come home and cut sessions in between. But one of the things is that what happened is that all of the people by then started hearing this different music that nobody else was playing. And so Barry had to ask James to come off the road because none of the producers wanted to work without him. So that's the main thing. So James said, "Baby, what do you think?" Barry wanted me to come off the road. I said, "Well, at least you'll be home with the babies. They begin to ask when Daddy's coming over." So, and he left, went and started playing directly with Motown without any, except night gigs from time to time. And basically the rest is really history because the rest is history. But later on we found out he had a fan club and all of that. I was in California before we found out that he had a fan club. I was standing outside with Hank Cosby's wife, Pat Cosby, and they were in the studio doing something because we were out there house hunting, but James was still working in between. So he came over, she said, "Ann, well, did they ever tell you that Jamerson had a fan club?" I said, "Fan club? What fan club?" So it ended up, he did have a fan club. Later on, after he died, I looked through a lot of papers. Motown had it tied up. Writer, producer, artist, everything. They didn't want him to go anywhere, regardless. So, like I said, the rest is history. And today we stand here. And what can I say? I miss the old boy. Because he used to say, when the guys would compliment me, say, "What? You this nugget down tonight, a day or whatever. He said, yeah, the old gal look good, don't she? So, many things else I can say, but I'm not going to hold up the program. We are here today, and I am so honored, and I said I was not going to cry, so I'm not going to do that. I am so thankful to God, because just think, He allowed me to be here today. I had a birthday, as you know, several weeks ago, July 30th to be exact, and I made 80, and that's a wonderful thing. And so by God's grace and mercy, I live to see, and I hope to do a lot of more things as it relates to James. So many more years, guys. And also, I wanted to tell you this little nugget. We are going to have that store open. I've been opening it forever, but we are going to have it open in the next 30 days. It's going to be the Jamerson online store. So take a peek. Look for it. God bless all of you. Thank you all. I didn't talk too fast, did I? Did I talk too fast, guys? No.
All right, next up is Professor Jason Johnson. Jason.
Good morning again, friends. One of the great examples of the art, breadth, and scope of a person's work is not just what they did individually in their industry, but how they passed the baton to the next generation, and the next generation, and the next generation, and how it reverberated here and wide and far. That's the impact that your all's dad had on the world, on music today. I went back and I did a little research prior to coming here. This morning I woke up, and through technology of phones now you can go on YouTube. So I said, let me pull up one of the most important and most memorable songs ever recorded, My Girl. I've been on 4 continents. Everywhere I go, people know My Girl. But the first 4 bars, the first couple of notes, everybody knows. Boom, 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 boom. That's James Jamerson on bass. And I asked myself, well, why is this so important? Why is this so endearing? And I realized that it sort of tracks the heartbeat. And all of us have a heartbeat. Well, fast forward, or maybe fast rewind, yesterday, 56 years ago, 1965, I buried my dad. 1965 was the year that My Girl was released. Reached #1 in March. It meant my whole family was broken apart. I'm the 5th of 5 brothers. And at that point, with the passing of my dad, my mother had died when I was 3. I was 8 years old. My family split apart. 2 brothers went to St. Louis. 2 brothers went to Memphis. One was old enough to be on his own. So I went to Memphis with my middle brother. Now, why do I tell you this story? Because when I got to Memphis, the only music I knew was Motown. And my brother's best friend wanted to be a bass player. So when you're the little kid, you got to hang out with whatever the big kids go. So all the time that we was over this friend's house, we were listening to James Jamerson on bass, because my brother's best friend was learning bass. He was listening to James Jamerson. Well, I didn't know who James Jamerson was. I just heard over and over and over these bass lines in Motown. Well, that friend, Ray Griffin, ended up being a major musician and playing on major recordings for Stax and other labels, and backing all kind of people. You can look him up, Ray Griffin. But he started out as a teenager, at 15, 16 years old, studying and listening to Jamerson play the bass. Little did I know that I would have some type of affiliation or connection to Motown. Up until today, I felt like I was born too late. I said, if I was just born 10 years early, I could have been in Motown. I could have been somebody. I could have been playing something. And I said, man, I missed that era. Well, I didn't. To conclude, this should show you how God steps in. I spent the last 39, 40 years in Washington, D.C. I ended up having 50 of my photographs, I'm a photographer, including in the Smithsonian African American Museum in the permanent collection. Then I get a job offer to Savannah State University to teach photography and to teach African Americans in the media. So I took that job for 1 year, and I've been there for the last 6 years. When I came down here, I remember traveling to South Carolina and seeing the sign that said Edisto Island. I knew that James was from Edisto, so I said, let me just go over and just see if some of his people's over there. Now this is how small connections are. You know, we talk about 6 degrees of separation. I don't know how many of y'all ever been to Edisto. It's a small community. But I went and I looked and I saw some men who looked like they would have been Jamerson's age, sitting under the shade tree playing some checkers or playing cards. And I asked them, did they know James Jamerson? And they started to tell me about Jamerson, him growing up. And then they said, yeah, his cousin, them go to the church down the street there. And so I went to the church. I met a cousin who told me to come by another house after service and meet another cousin who would put me in touch with this cousin. And then this cousin put me in touch with Annie. And it goes full circle. So I told Anthony, I said, look, I'm in the Smithsonian. That's about as high as it gets for me. I mean, that's Photographer's Hall of Fame. I said, something of Jamerson needs to be in the Smithsonian. 10, 20 million people come there a year. It is for always. And it's going to be preserved as long as there's America, there'll be a Smithsonian. So my commitment to him was to make sure that we get something of James Jamerson in the Smithsonian Museum. And in that process, he got me hooked on this particular item. So this is just one of 3 or 4 items in the legacy that we're checking off the box. So now that this is done, we can move on to getting James into the South Carolina Hall of Fame. Then we're gonna get him into the Smithsonian and other museums. Up where he belongs. Up where we are. Yeah. So this is the beginning. This is not the end. And I don't think God would have brought me to Savannah, Georgia, through Edisto Island, just to teach at Savannah State. But now that I'm teaching a course called African Americans in the Media, in which I'm teaching Motown and Stax and Philadelphia International, I'm able to incorporate this rich history into the lesson plan and pass the baton to the next generation. Thank you, friends.
All right.
What I wanted to say was, I can stand here, okay? What I wanted to say is, a lot of people don't know that when James started out, they say he's one of. But when James started out playing the bass, nobody could play like him. Barry had to ask him to not put so much because of the fact they couldn't play it and the artist didn't sound right when he went on the road. So he asked him to, kind of cool it. And he did. But, and people were studying my husband's bass line like the Bible has said one way or the other, because they could not play that. But what I wanted to highlight is, I see this on the internet all the time, that Jamerson was in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But James is in the the Hall of Fame, rock and roll, and rhythm and blues, and Nashville, and Fender Bass, and international, and he has a Lifetime Achievement Award, Grammy Award. So I'm sure I got several others. I probably missed something, but I don't want that to be missed because everyone always gets to just one award.
You want me to add two more?
Oh no, and
I can add two more.
Hollywood Walk Walk,
There you go.
and that started it all.
One more.
And I'm trying to think of another.
Hollywood Rock Walk and Hollywood.
The star on Star in Hollywood. So I just didn't want that to go unnoticed because that's part of his history and legacy. Okay, thank you.
We were supposed to have Dennis Coffee right now, but I don't think it's here. Is Dennis here?
No, he's not well today.
You're not well today?
Last night he wasn't feeling good and he couldn't make it.
But since we couldn't have Dennis, we'll turn Dennis time over to Miss Penny James.
Come up here with me, Tam and Joe. Joe.
Family.
I just want to thank everyone who has taken time out of their busy schedule to come see about my daddy, our father, our grandfather, our uncle, cousin. You know, we just really appreciate everyone participating and giving us free lunch today. Felix, I appreciate you hooking this up, and Anthony. And Anthony's family is here. I haven't seen my other cousin in a long time. She's over there. We have a lot of musicians in the house. Hey, y'all. Some of Jimmy's friends are here. And it's just such a blessing to see you guys come out. We have Scotty and his son out here. I mean, I can name a lot of different people and the cousins and relatives, but thank you so much. And I can't wait to see the unveiling of this tombstone, this headstone. You know, we come out here, and the first time when I met my sister 3 years ago, we came out here together, and it was like we couldn't look at each other because it was like mind-blowing. I have been the only girl for 50-something years.
Yeah, man.
I'm just saying, but it's I kept feeling something, but it's a blessing because you just expand on family. And you know, God is good, and I appreciate Mom. We had a great celebration for her 80th birthday, so that was rough, but we got through it because I started to tell her.
You want to go back in the car?
But I just want to thank you. It's just really nice to see everybody. Tina, you come up here too.
She's another part of the family.
It's just a blessing. My grandma, I wish she could be here. I wish Jimmy could be here. I wish Derek could be here. I'm just,
Mommy, you want to go in the car?
it's just amazing. So I'm gonna try. Well, I'll probably cry because it's like reliving it all over again. When you touch me, it's really, you know. But it's truly a blessing. And I have my rock here. He's been supportive through everything because I had it rough this morning. Had it really rough. It's just everything. But thank you. And Jason, thank you. Appreciate you guys. Love you.
James Lee Jamerson.
Oh my God.